Welcome to Your Biz, Your Rules with Dara Paddy, the podcast here to help you weave the perks and quirks of your personality into your business. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss another episode. Now let's get to it. And hello everyone, welcome back to Your Biz, Your Rules. Today I am very excited to introduce a friend of mine from my mastermind, Miss Julie Creffield. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Please introduce yourself.
So I'm Julie Creffield. I am a plus size marathon runner, author and a motivational speaker.
Oh, that was really short and sweet. I like that.
Should I talk about what I actually do?
Talk about what you actually do so people can get a feel for you and your stuff.
Yeah. So I run a company called Too Fat to Run, which is a global fitness movement, which came out of a blog that I started writing 7 years ago. So I help women all over the world of all shapes and sizes to enjoy fitness, really. And it's kind of expanded a little bit now. So it's more, I'm a kind of life coaching as well to help women just to live bigger lives, really, and to not kind of wait till they get to a certain size to do all the exciting things they want to do with their lives.
I like that because I think a lot of people have this feeling of when I'm like this or like that, I can do whatever it is.
Absolutely. And you know, it's that thing of, I won't go for that job because people of my size don't do that job, or I won't do this activity. And, you know, I experienced it myself. I put off going backpacking because I didn't think large people went backpacking, because all the images on all the magazines are always of skinny people going backpacking. So it's just, you know, we're bombarded with these media images and we make up these little stories in our head, really.
Yeah, like, I can completely relate to that. Like, my issues have been less about like big adventures like backpacking and more like, oh, like I can't really do a live stream until I've done my hair and makeup. I can't really like go and be featured on this video or have my photos taken until I've lost this amount of weight. I can't do this. And it's like really tiny little concerns, but they're always there in my mind.
That's the thing, you know, it can be the big things, but it also can be those tiny little things. Like I've had women saying, you know, oh, I can't wear hats. I'm like, what do you mean you can't wear hats? You know, or, you know, just really silly kind of small things that actually they've been carrying around, you know, for a long, long time. And the minute they kind of declutter and release that, they feel so much better. And then they can apply that little change to something a lot bigger.
So it's funny that you just said the hats thing. For like the longest time, I've had to think about necklines. There's like this one neckline that I'm like, no, I can't wear that. I cannot wear that until I've lost like 3 stone or something. And it's probably all madness, but I've just like, whenever I go in a shop and see them, I don't even try things on, no matter how much I like them, because I'm like, no, it's got that neckline, I can't possibly wear it.
Yeah, I think it's about, you know, we all do it, you know, whatever size we are. We create these little rules for ourselves, and we, you know, we create more and more of these rules to the point where we're like, what can I actually do? You know, and some of that is about control and some of it is just, you know, fear. A lot of it is fear.
Well, I think that sort of empowerment is why people are so drawn to you, because I know you've got this like massive following that you've built over these years, and like I kind of want to pick your brain about how you've done that.
Sure. Yeah. So when I first started blogging, I didn't know about blogging. I didn't know how it worked. For me, I thought, oh, it's an American thing, you know. So this was like 7 years ago. And at the time I had a MySpace profile, and you had the option to do these like little micro blogs, so these updates. And I'd been mucking about with those, just kind of talking about my drunken nights out. So I kind of was like, oh, I could blog. And so I did this race, and I came last in the race. And by the time I got to the finish line wasn't there, and everyone had packed up and gone home. And so I was like, at the time it was really like I was so embarrassed and really hurt. But by the time I got home, I realised how funny it was. And I was like, God, if ever I'm going to write a blog, I need to start today. And that was my first blog. It was talking about coming last and the finish line having been packed out. But I didn't know anything about how it worked. I didn't know about SEO, didn't know about graphic design. It was anonymous, so it didn't use my name or any photos. It used a template. I didn't even have my own web address. It was all really cheap and cheerful. And it was never supposed to be a business. It was just a bit of fun, a hobby. I had a job. And actually for a long time, I felt like the blog had to be anonymous because it was kind of in conflict with the work that I did. So, I was blogging probably for a year to 2 years before anyone was really reading it in any kind of numbers. So it was completely organic the way it grew. And it gave me a chance to write loads of rubbish posts. I mean, when I go back and look at some of the old posts, I think, God, what was I thinking about? And they were quite self-obsessed and not much value to my readers. But because I didn't have a lot of readers, then it didn't really matter. So it gave me a chance to kind of play around and work out what did people want to read about. And actually, it turns out they wanted to read less about me and they wanted more content that was going to help them on their journey. So although I'd continue to talk about, the run I'd been on, I would give some lessons of what I'd learned and how they could apply what I'd learned. But it probably took me the first year or so to even consider my reader. It was very selfish. It was all about me. And I wasn't really thinking about who was reading it. And then I started getting these emails from women like in America saying, oh my God, there's no content like this out there. You inspire me to run. There's nobody that is like you. And then I started to feel a bit of a sense of responsibility to write better and it turned more into a kind of campaign really. So I'd start kind of looking for, where discrimination was happening in plus size fitness, and I'd become a little bit more militant in my view. And I started talking about stuff that had happened in the media and, running companies that were not providing big sizes. And that's when the momentum started, because people would start sharing my posts and saying, yeah, I agree too. But there was never a plan, there was never a strategy. I still don't know how to do SEO. There's all this stuff that other kind of professional bloggers do and do really well that I still don't do. So I think a lot of it has just been my voice, and I think a lot of it was timing as well, because nobody was talking about plus size fitness 7 years ago. It wasn't a thing, and now it is. So I was kind of ahead of that curve, which is just kind of by fluke really. But yeah, definitely, when I think back to those early days, I couldn't ever imagine, making a living from it. I didn't think that was possible.
I think there's a lesson in this here, because so many people come to me moaning that nobody reads their posts and nobody engages with their stuff. And there is such a power in being anonymous, especially at the start, because it gives you that space to experiment and try things out and figure out what you like and what you don't like, and you're not expected to have all the answers, because like you said, once people start hanging off every word, there's a certain responsibility there, like you have to show up and give them something.
Absolutely. And I think also there was a real kind of shift for me when I started doing the blog full time, and I'd been made redundant from my job, and I was kind of experimenting to see if I could make a living from it. And I realized that I couldn't just rely on kind of organic growth. I had to get out to where the masses are. And, my target market is very ordinary, overweight, middle-aged women, of which there are billions around the world. So I was like, I can't do it blog post by blog post. I need to get out to where these women are. And I started kind of pitching and connection on Twitter. I mean, Twitter was really influential for me at the start because I didn't have a Facebook presence or an Instagram presence. It was all done on Twitter. But I'd reach out to kind of journalists, and I'd watch what the Daily Mail was talking about, and if they did something really provocative, I'd write a blog post on it so that I'd catch their attention. And there was a big thing with Katie Hopkins, who was doing this TV show about putting on weight and losing weight. So I started a Twitter campaign called Jog On Katie Hopkins, and the Daily Mail picked it up, and I was on like page 5 of the Daily Mail with a big kind of, blogger takes Katie Hopkins to, and it was just that kind of publicity really helped me to get the numbers. But that was kind of 3 years into blogging, and that was when I had a lot more confidence in my voice and in my message, because I had you know, I already had some followers behind me. I think it's really hard to do that when you don't have people that are willing to kind of back you up. Because I mean, at first I got quite a bit of backlash on Twitter, and then my followers would jump in and defend me, which was really nice. Particularly if you're talking about quite provocative stuff.
God, I wish I'd known you then, because I remember seeing adverts for that and being completely enraged.
And actually, whenever I see something really enraging, it doesn't really enrage me. I just think, oh, great, that's something great I can write about, you know. And when I can remember I just had my daughter and I was getting back into running, and I went out for my very first run after having her, and it was early in the morning, and these lads were coming back from a local nightclub, and one of them slapped my bum as I run past. And at the time it was awful, and I called the police and all of this kind of stuff, but it made for such a great blog post. Do you know what I mean? So it you know,
there's silver linings everywhere.
There's silver lining. Whenever like something really bad happens, I'm like, oh, that's such great content. And I think that's the thing that you have to be willing to do, I think, as a blogger, to connect with people. There's so many bloggers now, it's really hard to stand out. And the way you stand out is by allowing your reader into your life. You can't just comment on other stuff, and you can't just push content out. You have to give people a window into how it affects you. And you have to have that conversation with yourself about how much are you willing to give of yourself, you know. And people online probably think they know everything about me, and because I do share, I'm an oversharer. But I think that's why my audience has grown, because they trust that what I'm saying is honest, because I never hold anything back. But I know some bloggers that want more of a kind of barrier between their real life and their online life. But I know definitely feedback from my followers, you know, particularly with the blog, but also in my books that I write, you know, they always talk about my honesty and the fact that I talk about the stuff that other fitness bloggers are just not talking about.
I think when I think about the people that I follow, like, they do fall into those two camps. There's the people who share all of this like gritty personal stuff, and then there's the people who just share sort of like the helpful tips and things like that, but not really personal stuff. And I think like I enjoyed both, but the ones that I like would stalk to the ends of the earth and like never miss a blog post are those personal ones.
But there's a middle ground. I think there is a middle ground, because I think a lot of people have that polarized view of bloggers, and they think, I don't want to sell out. I don't want to have to tell everybody everything. You don't. You can be really selective and just tell tiny little bits and snippets and stories. And it could be something that happened to you on a bus, you know, or it could be something that you witnessed. But I think otherwise, everyone's talking about the same stuff. You've got to package it up differently.
Yeah, it can be like a tiny little anecdote to illustrate a point.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you see so many people. I mean, I don't know if it's just the world and like the market I work in, is you see so many people regurgitating the same examples and the same stats and the same references, and you just start skimming and scrolling and not paying attention. Whereas if somebody uses a random example about their dog, because I have dogs, so that appeals to me, or just like something random about a night out or whatever it is, it breaks it up, and it I don't know if it makes you just more able to relate it to your life, and therefore it's more interesting to you, because we're all narcissists. I don't know.
Yeah, I just think as humans we want to connect with other humans, and you know, the reality of a blogger's life is you're sitting behind a computer screen most of the time. So when you can give little snippets that people can go, oh, that happened to me, or that happened to my friend, you know, you're more human. And you know, it's really interesting. I meet women at races all the time, and sometimes they'll come over and say hello and tell me they love my blog, and then other times they won't come up and say hello, but they'll wait till they get home and then email me or message me and go, oh, I saw you at a race, but I was too embarrassed to come and say hello. And that just drives me nuts, because I'm like, I'm such a normal person. I wish you'd come over and said hello. I'm never going to be one of those people that are too good to speak to people. But I'm always interested in that psychology where certain bloggers are seen as kind of celebrities, you know, and I'm sure most bloggers start out just as ordinary people with something to say. So I'm always interested in that kind of element of celebrity that kind of bloggers now have.
You're just internet famous.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Such a hard life.
Although saying that, I had a guy come to fix my car a couple of months ago, and when he got out of his van, he went, oh, you're that fat bird from the TV that teaches women to run. I was like, Yes, that is me. Oh, my wife loves you. So I get recognised by women, but never by men. So that really tickled me. But yeah.
I remember a few years ago, God, it must 3-4 years ago now, I went to this bloggers meetup in Birmingham, and there was somebody who, it turned out she was actually speaking at the event. And like I'd followed her blog for ages and ages and ages. And I was just like, oh, like, shall I go speak to her? Like, do I dare like just randomly walk up to her and say hello? And like, I was so embarrassed of myself. I like walked up to her and I was like, oh my God, I love your blog. Like some absolute fangirl mess. As it turns out, she's like a massive introvert and really shy and doesn't like going up and talking to people herself, so she could really relate. And we got talking, and we are now like, she's one of my closest friends. I speak to her like every week on Skype.
Yeah.
So Emma, if you're listening, I'm talking about you.
And the thing is, those stories, I mean, that is a perfect example of a story that you could talk about around, you know, are you an introvert in the blogging world? You know, I mean, that is a lovely, honest, authentic story. And most people would dismiss it, or it might be something that you talk about to your friends in the pub. Do you know what I mean? And I think sometimes we think that we don't have stories to tell, or I'm not a storyteller, or where do I get my content from? And it is those little things that happen. I can remember going to this event and I went into the toilets and Jo Pavey was there. And Jo Pavey is this, you know, she's the world record holder, 10-kilometre runner. And the reason that I know of her is because she's older than most runners. So she's a woman in her 40s and she's got 2 kids. So anyway, I bumped into her in the toilets and I went, oh my God. I was like, I love you. She was like, no, I love you. And she recognised me. And there was just this odd moment in the women's toilets where all these other women were just laughing at us both going, I love you. No, I love you. I love you. And I've just wrote about that in my new book, because it's just like a really cute, real story. And that's what people are looking for. They're looking for uniqueness, not just content.
Yeah, and I think one thing that holds a lot of people up is that they think their stories have to be these like big, enlightening, empowering moments, but really it can be anything.
Yeah.
So you've just mentioned your book, which leads us nicely onto the next thing I wanted to talk about, because I know that you randomly had the idea for a book a few weeks ago, and then like all of a sudden it's published and out there. So please tell us about that. Tell us how that all came to be.
Well, I've got a long-running history of writing books in a ridiculous fashion. And I went on a writer's course when I first turned the blog into a business, and I wasn't making any money from it. And I went on this writing course, which was run by Hay House, and they asked us to submit a proposal. And I spent a month writing this proposal, and it still wasn't anywhere near finished. And I just had this brainwave that said, Julie, this is ridiculous. You could have written the book by now. And that night I sat and wrote my first ebook, like literally in one night. I was so enraged with the amount of time I'd wasted on this proposal that I wrote my first ebook, which was called 10 Weeks to 10K. And I put it on Amazon. The design was rubbish. It had spelling mistakes. It had grammar. It was awful. It was short. It was just rubbish. And that weekend I made £300 from my $2.99 ebook on Amazon. And what it showed me was that there was a market, because I was deciding to run this as a business, and I didn't even know if there was a market. I didn't even know if people would put their hand in their pocket and buy my stuff. And what was also really nice was I had women offering to proofread my book, and they'd come back and go, there's a mistake on chapter 4 or whatever. So actually another thing that I realized is that people don't care if stuff is not perfect. And I did take the book down and redo it and make sure that it's better. So it's now still available on Amazon and still sells really well. So every year since then I wrote a book or 2 books, and I would take a few months to write them, never more than 4 or 5 months, if I'm being honest. And then one year I had an idea for a book, and I was having an interview with some kind of magazine, and they said, have you got a new book coming out this year? And I just off the top of my head said, yes, I have, and it's called New Year, Same You. And then I completely forgot about it for about 3 months and saw it in print in this magazine that I had a new book coming out, and I hadn't even started writing it. So I basically wrote a book in a month, and that was kind of last year. And then this year, just, there was all this kind of marathon madness around October, which is when everyone finds out about the London Marathon places, and lots of people were coming to me for advice, and I was thinking, why haven't I ever written a marathon book? And it was one of those things, I could have either waited until April and bring it out in April, or bring it out now to help people get ready for their marathon. So that's what I decided, and I decided like on the 3rd of October or something like that, and then by the end of October, it was already on Amazon, and people were ordering it. So it was literally, I think ridiculous like that. But again, it was one of those books that just kind of flowed out of me. It wasn't a difficult process. It was all stuff that I knew. I didn't have to research anything. It was just, the most difficult bit was forcing myself to sit at my computer and actually write it. But I didn't get writer's block on anything, and it just kind of, again, a lot of it was based on stories. So I was looking at the marathons that I've run, the funny things that had happened in training, little anecdotes, and kind of messages of hope for women, really. So it was quite, although it's a little bit stressful in terms of the time that I allowed myself, it was quite an enjoyable process. So it made me realise how much I actually knew, and like how much I know my stuff.
Okay, so because I'm nosy noticed a bit of an echo there. Because I'm nosy about this kind of stuff, I want to know about how do you structure your plan when you're working on a book? Do you have a plan, or is it just kind of like a word vomit sort of situation?
Yes and no. I force myself to have a plan because otherwise it's too scary. So what tends to happen is I'll get a concept pop into my head. So I never sit down and think, right, what do I want to write about? I will just be doing something else, and an idea will come into my head for a book. And it normally comes in the form of a title. So that's kind of normally how I do it. And I'll look on Amazon to see if there's anything similar. Often there isn't, particularly for my niche. So it starts with, a very simple title and a simple kind of concept of how it will be different to other books. And then I'll just do a real quick brainstorm of what needs to be in the book, and then I'll put it into chapters. Some books have a structure, like it might put the chapters into 3 areas. Some will have tasks. So one of my books is based on 99, actually initially it was called 99 Ways to Run with a Baby, but it wasn't doing very well, so I changed the title to How to Run with a Baby, and it started selling much better. But basically that was 99 tips, so it was literally just a list of 99 tips. Other ones have kind of tasks and challenges, so the structure will be based on the 60 or 70 challenges that I'm getting with women to kind of do or think about. So each book is slightly different, but I kind of pretty much keep to a similar format in terms of how I write them. So I don't muck about with the fonts. The chapter sizes tend to be about the same. Most of them have about the same word count, just to keep it simple. So I don't work with an editor. Well, no, I work with an editor who makes sure all my spelling mistakes are done, but I don't work with somebody who looks at the structure and suggests better ways to do it. I just get it done. And in the same way, I don't work with somebody that does all the layout and all of that. I just do that myself, but I keep it really simple, because I think what people are looking for from me, again, is the content and the message. They don't really care how it's packaged too much, So yeah, I try not to I try to keep things simple, because there are loads. You look online how to write a book. There's 1,000,001 ways to do it. There are 1,000,000 people, selling their services of how to do it and complicating things. And this book was written in a month, cost me less than £100 to get out and to market, and it managed to get to number 1 in its category. So, I think, I'm lucky that I've got a big following to sell it to. But, people take a year to write a book, and I don't necessarily think if I took a year it would be any better, because I just procrastinate and spend less time overall writing it anyway.
I mean, you get amazing results from the way you do it anyway, so why change?
Yeah. And it's kind of my philosophy. My philosophy is just get it done, get over your fear. And a lot of people just don't believe their stuff is good enough. I think that's ultimately why people go, right, I'm going to work with an editor and I'm going to take a year to do it and I really want to collect my thoughts. And I'm like, no, you know your stuff. Just get it onto a piece of paper and get it out. And I think because I've got so many creative ideas, a lot of people feel like they only have one book in them. I've got like a list of book titles of books that I know I will write at some point. So, you know, I was halfway through this book and an idea popped into my head for another book that I want to write. And I almost wanted to stop this one and start the new one because it's, you know, exciting. So I think, you know, you can take 10 years to do your best piece of work, or you can take 10 weeks. It's how you decide to do it.
I think, like many other business owners, I've got on my list of one-day things, I have got write a book.
Yeah,
it's been that. In fact, it's probably been there since before I even started a business. It's been write a book. That's like a life goal.
Yeah.
But when it comes to coming up with an idea, I just get completely stuck because, you know, I can come up with endless ideas for blog post topics or podcast episodes or like social media stuff or like client content. There's like a never-ending supply of ideas in my head for those things. But when it comes to writing a book, I'm just like, oh my God, like what can I write about?
I think there's often a pressure of it will be the book that I'm known for. And if you look at a lot of famous authors, they're not known for their first book. So, and often they'll take their first books out of you know, circulation because it's not who they finally become. You know, so you look at somebody like Tony Robbins. You know, he will be probably known for one of his middle books, not one of the first ones that he wrote. So I think there is this pressure that it's got to be perfect the first time around, and it will be the only one you ever write. And I think when I wrote my first one, I consciously thought, this is not the book. This is just a book to get out, make myself some money, learn the process, test the market. Because my idea for a book was The Fat Girl's Guide to Running, which would be more like a comprehensive Bible for women, and it would cover every topic. But actually, looking back, if I'd done that, I would have done myself out for market because everything would have been in one book. And now, every 6 months, I could bring out a different book on a different aspect of running and people buy it. So I'm glad I didn't take a year to write the book because it would have been the wrong choice for me.
I really, really like that outlook.
And you can always take it down. Like, if you don't spend a lot of money on it and you don't spend a lot of time on it, if you don't like it, you can take it down. You know, you could use it as a giveaway. You know, and actually I've just done that with one of my books, which is quite a short book. People are not really buying it that much anymore. So I've taken it off of Amazon and I'll use it as a kind of freebie.
I think my challenge with the book writing thing is I always think it has to be like a big idea. It has to be something I can write a lot about because I tend to be quite a succinct writer. Like I edit an awful lot. I use the bare minimum of words I can to make my point because I don't buy into just waffling on, really.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to writing a book, I'm scared that I would say everything I want to say in about 3 pages and not quite a book.
There is an element of kind of what do you call it, like just you add stuff. So I often will do quotes at the beginning of chapters. I will do little stories to kind of, you know, to puff it out a little bit, because you're right, I could probably give my best advice in 5 pages, but people want to enjoy the process. So I always think, what are people going to enjoy? And actually, so I've got the book came out on Monday and I've got 16 or 17 reviews. They're all 5-star reviews, which is brilliant. But actually what I love about it is that women are saying, like so many women are all saying, it's like sitting down and having a cup of tea with Julie. That's what they're getting from it, because I write just like I talk. It just spills out, and I don't over edit. That's the other thing, is that it's very rare that I will take chunks out. I might tweak stuff, but I try not to look. I just literally write the chapter, move on to the next chapter, write the chapter, and then I'll go back and just read it to make sure it makes sense. I don't overanalyze stuff, because otherwise I'll drive myself nuts. I've just learned, like, trust yourself. What you think is what you think, and that process of transferring what you think onto paper, you have to trust that. Because if you was talking to somebody, if you was a coach and you was talking to somebody and giving them advice, you couldn't give them advice and then go, oh, hang on a second, let me rethink that, and then give them a second piece of advice and then go back and go, actually, no, that's not what I thought. So you have to really trust your gut and go, right, what is it I think on this topic, and just write it.
I like that. And I really like that you've had that feedback as well, because you're such like a warm person. So it's really nice that that comes across in your writing and people actually get that from it.
Yeah. Because, I think when I looked at what books are out there on the market for marathon running, they're all very technical, or they're very story based. So it'll be, the story of overcoming adversity. So there's lots of kind of, I got cancer, I run a marathon. This traumatic thing happened to me and I run a marathon, and it's all about what they learned. My book sits somewhere in the middle. So it has the technical stuff, but it explains what it all is and talks about it in normal language. And then it has all the funny stories and the anecdotes and the learning. So it's kind of a combination of the two. And from what I could see, there wasn't anything on the market like that. And there wasn't anything for overweight women in that way. So yeah, I'm glad I spotted that gap.
I think I've made a bit of a rod for my own back, because a while back I wrote this blog post on everything I hate about BizBooks. And so it was like this massive rant basically about all of the things that really annoy me about non-fiction books, because I find so many of them like really self-indulgent, and when they're just packaging up blog posts that haven't even really been edited, they're just stitched together and like they're trying to sell it as a book, or the entire book seems to be just screenshots of social media posts that other people have like shared, and I'm just like, stop it, like write actual words, write an actual book. It drives me mad. And now I think, if I write a book, it has to be really good.
But I think you could do a bridging post, because I've written posts in the past and I look at them now and I don't agree with my view back then. That's the great thing about blogging, is that you evolve, but you don't have to go back and edit that blog, because the blog is dated and that is exactly how you felt at that time. So I've wrote a lot in the past about cut-off times for marathons. So a lot of marathons, they have a cut-off time of 8 hours, and if you are longer than that, you don't get a medal. And I used to think that was out of order. I used to think everyone's paying the same, it's discriminatory and all of this. And then when I think about it, the logistics involved make it impossible to allow people to take 12 hours to run a marathon. It's not healthy for the person running the marathon. It's not healthy for the volunteers out there. The roads are closed. There's all this stuff. So I've written posts now, which are I've done a 360 on how I felt 4 years ago, and that's okay. So you probably need to write an update of that post, and use that to kind of work out what you do want to write a book about, and how you do want a business book, or a kind of non-fiction book to kind of work.
Yeah.
You've probably got your answers.
I do agree still with everything I said in that post. I do. I don't like this thing where, and I've noticed that a lot of it in the blogging community is where it is just, they've picked like 10, 15, 20 blog posts off their site and just glued them together. And like, there's no flow between them. There's no, because you want a slight bit of editing to make it flow as a book and make it feel like a whole book rather than just a PDF of all your blog posts.
Yeah. And, I won't lie, there was certain content in the new book that came directly from the blog. But that tended to be kind of, training advice that it still stands by. That's my training advice. But you would never know which bits came from a blog and which bits didn't, because I spent the time making it flow.
Yeah, which I think is fine, because you've got to like repurpose all of the good stuff that you've done, and if like, why reinvent the wheel if you've already written that? But it's like, I think I like the sound of the way that you've done it, because it's more organic, it's more natural, it all goes together. It's not just a case of boom, 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 here's a book.
Yeah, but I think it's also knowing, why do you want to write a book? What purpose does it serve? For me in the early days, it was literally making some money. Like literally I was like, if I write a book every 6 months, I can make X amount of money and that helps pay the bills. But then it changed, and I realised that like I had a sense of duty to get better information out to people who need it. And that's why actually the marketing of this book has been really easy, because I know once women read it, it's going to make their journey so much easier. So I don't feel like I'm flogging them something. I just want to get it into the hands of as many women as possible. And I think my early books helped to establish me as an expert. So even if they didn't make me the money I wanted to, it helped people to take me seriously. And it's something like a physical thing when you're at conferences and stuff like that, you can hand to somebody and you can send them to PR companies and give them away as gifts and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people write books thinking it's going to do certain things and they don't, and then they feel disappointed by it. Because I mean, there are so many books on Amazon. It's something like 800,000 books are on Amazon, and the average book only sells, the average ebook sells £300 in its lifetime. So if you think about that, there are a whole heap of not necessarily rubbish books, but books that are not selling. So books that possibly women or whoever have taken a lifetime to write and are never going to see the light of day just because of the amount that's out there. And I went to a conference once and the speaker said there are more publishers of books than there are readers. We're going to get to that tipping point where everyone is publishers, everyone's a producer, everyone is creating content, and less of us are actually reading that content.
It's like the double-edged sword of the internet, isn't it? Because everybody has that platform, everyone has that opportunity to have a voice.
Yeah.
I was having a chat with somebody the other day and we were talking about social media, and it's like everybody is starting the conversation, but nobody's actually coming in to finish the conversation or to join in the conversation. So it's just like everybody stood there sort of saying whatever their message is, but there's not necessarily always somebody to listen.
Yeah, everybody's broadcasting. I think that's how I see it. Everyone is broadcasting rather than collaborating and having conversations. It's all like, listen to what I have to say. And actually how I've built my Facebook community, and actually 80% of my income comes via Facebook in terms of my clients, because if you think about my target market, middle-aged, ordinary, overweight women, they hang out on Facebook. They don't hang out on Twitter or LinkedIn or any of those places. That's where they are. And I didn't want to run a Facebook page. I was really against it for a long time. And then I decided to set one up, and within less than a year, I had over 20,000 women on my page. So, and the way I did that was asking questions. So rather than just pushing out my stuff, I was starting conversations and I was asking for opinions and getting feedback. And all of my books have quotes from women within my community, and that helps them to feel like they're helping me to build this business, helping to build this brand. And then they feel like they want to share it with their friends and family because they feel part of it.
So it's like you're co-creating a movement.
Absolutely. And, I got to a point where I felt really uncomfortable being the figurehead of the business. Like, I went to see this business advisor really early on, and he was quite old and just not very with it. And he said, "Oh, you'll never make any money from blogging. It's all about your ego, and all this kind of stuff." And it really that seed sat in my head for a long time, with me thinking, yeah, maybe it is all about my ego, and maybe it's all about me. And I wanted to move away from that. So when I got my website designed, when I actually spent some money on it, I made a conscious effort to get some photos of a group of women. So, okay, I was standing at the front of them, but it wasn't just about me, because actually for this brand to build in the way I want it to build, I want there to be like 2 Fat to Run coaches in every country in the world, in every state in America, in every county in the UK. I don't want to have to be going to each and every one of them training up women. I think if people get the brand values, then they can deliver the same programs that I deliver just within their communities. And then it doesn't all have to be about me.
Very rousing and empowering hearing you talk about it.
Sorry, I'm on my soapbox again.
I'm not even a runner. I avoid running whenever I can. So it's saying that I used to actually run every morning, and then all of a sudden it's like one day I just started feeling really embarrassed about how I run. And so I'd run earlier and earlier in the morning, but then as it got closer towards summer, people were coming out earlier because it was lighter. And I was just like, no, I have to stop this now. I can't deal with people watching me run.
Well, it's fascinating. It's the stuff that underpins all of my work, not just the running work, but the life coaching work as well. Because Sport England did a bit of research about why 2 million fewer women play sport than men. And it was all to do with fear. It was to do with judgment. So it got me thinking, if women are not playing sport and not running because of this fear of judgment, what else are they doing for the same reason. And I get stories from women who they run in their garden shed on a treadmill because they don't want to be seen in public, or they run at night time when it's dark, or women that don't tell their husbands that they run and they hide their running kit because they know if he sees it he'll laugh at them. And there's all these really sad stories of women hiding away, and also their running technique is not rubbish, but it's not great because they're trying to hide their boobs or not have their bum jiggle or whatever it is. So there are all these elements of where women are playing small because of fear of judgment, and it just leaks into every aspect of their life. So, people say, oh, you're always harping on about running, but actually running is just the tool for me. That's not really what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about women being the best versions of themselves and not being held back by fear.
It's like there's this whole network of underground runners. I never even knew.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know from things that you've posted in our mastermind group that the running, like, it really helps you find that like peace and that sanity when you're feeling really overwhelmed with your own business. And I was wondering if you could like share a few of the practical benefits of engaging in whatever that outside activity is.
Yeah, I think, I live in East London, which is quite built up. It's quite urban. You would think that, there weren't very many nice places to run. But actually, when I started running, I started finding these really pretty routes along canals and in nature reserves. I know it sounds weird, but through cemeteries and these places that helped me to connect with nature. And I've always lived in a city, so I didn't feel like I needed that connection to nature, but I really do. So running helps me to get that and to get fresh air. It also helps me to think. So I'm not very good at meditating or yoga or anything that slows me down, but running has that meditative kind of effect on me. So it helps me to switch off kind of all of the kind of competing voices in my head and to make sense of stuff. And often my best ideas for my business and for my life come while I'm running. And it's something, I didn't really get it in the early days. In the early days of my running career, it was all about weight loss. It was all about achieving these goals, getting up to marathon distance. And then the moment I had my daughter, it wasn't about any of those things anymore. It was about escaping. And I know that sounds awful, but when you are used to being a career girl and then all of a sudden you're like 3 months in a house with, in a flat with a small child, no childcare, can't get out, and the only thing that allowed me to go out was to go out for a run. And I know that sounds really negative, like I was locked away in a castle, but it felt like, if I wanted to go shopping, obviously I could take the baby with me, but you can't take a baby with you running. So it became this time that was not about anyone else. It was just about me. And it felt like I was reclaiming a small part of myself by saying, actually, I'm going to go for a run today and you're going to have to look after the baby because I need some time to myself. So running became that thing that was just mine, that I could kind of ring fence and no one else could affect. Because, running, particularly marathon running, is a very selfish sport. It's not a team sport at all. You've got to be really pig-headed about getting your training in. You have to ask for help and you have to just say, sorry, I'm off, I'll be back in 4 hours. Do you know what I mean? And I think that kind of empowered me quite a bit to realise that it's really important, particularly as women, to carve out time that's just for you, that isn't about the family, that isn't about your work responsibilities. It's about kind of time, to make sense of your life.
Yeah, I think I do the lazy girls version of that. So mine is like a casual stroll around with my dogs twice a day.
Yeah. And I'm quite I've got into walking. So I did an ultra marathon in July, which was 42 miles in 24 hours. And obviously I'm not going to run consistently for 24 hours. So a lot of that was walking and hiking. And so actually I'm a big fan of walking. I think it does exactly the same thing that running does in terms of giving you that time for your brain to switch off and connect. So yes.
Yeah, and I think it can be like, I don't know if it's just me being overly cynical, but I find it really difficult to do the meditation side of things.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like all of the thoughts speed up and start running around my head even more when I'm trying to make them stop. And with yoga, I am way too competitive for yoga. I end up injuring myself because I think I can do all of the pretzel things that the instructor can do. So just having those 20-30 minutes in the morning to just walk around, and I live in a city too, so it's like around all the back streets, just sort of finding little bit patches of grass and listening to a podcast, or just not listening to anything, having just that time to breathe and think and just not have to focus on anything before I start my day. It just makes me feel like such a sane human.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't get that feeling a lot.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't. I think it's why running is so popular with women, because everything else feels like a chore. Going to a class feels like a chore. Going to the gym feels like a chore, whereas running can feel a bit like an adventure, and you could take it as fast or as slow as you like.
Do you know what? I might think about starting up my running again, because whenever I think about like the health and fitness stuff, the thought of having to sign up for a gym or go to a class, it is very much like, not like, because I don't know if it's because I'm an introvert or because I'm just stroppy, but I don't always think, oh yeah, it's my downtime, I want to go be around people.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that I like, I do work a lot by myself, but I love, when I'm marathon training, you're heading out for, even if I'm doing like 16 miles, which isn't a lot when you think about marathon training, but 16 miles will still take me 4 or 5 hours. So you are, even though you might be around people in busy parks and stuff like that, it feels really empowering to know that you're on this journey, and people might be looking at you and thinking, oh, you're running, but they don't know that you've already done 10 miles, or, that you're on this kind of epic adventure, this quest to get the miles in, and there is something quite cool about that. And I think for women that are, have done running or are a bit kind of, I don't know, I think it's about having that goal. So it doesn't need to be necessarily be a marathon, but I think one of the biggest problems women have with running is they don't think about it. So they go out and run, and then they get bored because they do the same routes, the same pace. But actually there are so many fun ways of switching it up and setting yourself mini goals that don't need to be about being fast. It doesn't need to be about going far, but just different ways of doing things so that it's not boring.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I definitely think it's so important as business owners for us to set goals that aren't just about business.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to just get caught up in that hamster wheel of always focusing on the business, on the work, making things better. And yeah, that's important, but it's not your life.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that, my business is allowing me to do both, and the reality is if I don't run, I have nothing to write about. So, the blog has kept my running up. Because, I can go a couple of weeks without running and think, I can't get away with this any longer. I've really got to go out and run or put my name down for a race, because actually it's quiet time for me. I've got no races in the diary now until the new year. But there's a race coming up, which is like a through the night race, which is like laps. I'm thinking, maybe I'll put my name down for that just so I've got something to write about between now and Christmas.
It's like the ultimate form of accountability.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the lesson is, whatever you're likely to put off, start a blog about that, because then you never will.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know you're running your Live Big Mastermind, so tell us about that. That's really exciting.
Yeah, so it kind of is, again, it's something that's grown quite organically. So I have an online running club called The Clubhouse, and there's about 300, 400 women in there at any given time. And it's a really cool place to hang out. It's a really safe space. And although it's about running, the women disclose lots of stuff about their lives. So it starts off with, I couldn't get out for a run this week because my kids are being naughty or whatever. And then you start to build up a picture of these women's lives, and then the advice becomes less about running and more about how to handle their kids or how to convince their husband that running's, good for their relationship or whatever. So it started that women were looking or seeking advice and support on other areas of their life, not just the running. And there was lots of stuff around kind of weight loss and self-worth and self-care and things that were kind of out of my remit as somebody running an online kind of running club. And actually some of the women were like, I don't want all of that stuff, I just want to talk about running. And others were like, well, no, this is really important, I want to be able to have a space where I can talk about these things. So I realized that I needed to do something where I could work more intensively with women to work through their goals, their blockages, their barriers, and it not be purely about running. And the other thing is I was meeting lots of women at networking things, or they'd hear me speak and go, how can I work with you? And I'd say, oh, I've got this running program. And they're like, but I don't like running, but I want to work with you. So I didn't have anything to offer women that were A, not overweight, and B, not into running. So I realized that I needed to create something. So I tested something out last year, which was about setting big, fat, stupid goals, which is one of my concepts. And although it worked and the women did set big, fat, stupid goals, so one of the women set a goal to climb Kilimanjaro, and she's on the path to do that in the spring. So kind of the program worked, but it didn't fit in terms of my brand. So I've asked lots of people, outside of the running stuff, how would you describe me? What do you think my purpose is in life? And lots of people said, well, you help women to live bigger lives, live more adventurous, and I like that term bigger, because a lot of women are playing small in their lives. So I've created a kind of 10-week mastermind, which looks at lots of different kind of areas, stuff around time management, stuff around goal setting, and lots of women say, God, I haven't had a goal, I haven't thought about what I want to be since I was at school, and most of the women that I work with are in their 50s, and they just don't have the time to sit and think about themselves. So this mastermind gives them that space. So they've got 10 weeks to work through kind of the 10 different themes, but it's a lifetime access course. So once they've done it once, they can stay in the Facebook group and they can go through the modules that really resonate with them, or they can set new goals and kind of revisit different things each time. But it's things like really kind of frivolous things, like saying what do you want? Like, give me 100 things that you want. And sometimes it could be, I want a new washing machine, or I want a haircut that I like, or a pair of jeans that fit, or I want to go and visit my family. And and I did a workshop with a group of women, like a physical workshop with a group of women a couple of weeks ago, and did the same kind of 10 things really. And a woman came up to me in tears afterwards and said, I can't remember the last time somebody asked me what I want. And that gives me goosebumps, because there are so many women, and the women I work with, they're not into personal development, they're not running businesses, on the whole, they are normal women that have busy, normal lives, so I work with lots of teachers, people in healthcare, stay-at-home mums. A lot of the women that I work with are undervalued and kind of have forgotten who they are a little bit, and have kind of settled into a way of living that isn't who they were 20 years ago. It wasn't the life that they imagined for themselves. And because we're all in the same boat, or the women feel like they're all in the same boat, they can be honest with each other and share some of this. And being able to set themselves kind of micro goals, like silly things like going and buying themselves some new underwear, or decluttering their bedroom, or whatever it might be. It feels like they're making tiny steps towards kind of creating the life that they want. And I'm really, really enjoying it. So we're piloting the program at the moment, and we've got another round of the pilot starting in December. And then January, I'll have a kind of big, more fancy launch to try and kind of get more women involved. But it's the kind of stuff that lights me up, and the program is done online. It's done. So I've got clients in Australia, America, all across the UK, and it's fun. It's really nice bringing women together from all walks of life, and they start, a bit like our mastermind. You start with strangers, and then you start to invest in these people and understand their lives, and want to not only improve your life but improve their lives too. And there's something really nice about that.
I'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes, so that if anybody listening to this is interested in living a bigger life, they can come and seek you out.
Brilliant.
Because I think it sounds fantastic, and it sounds like something that so many people I know are in like real dire need of.
Yeah. And I always say, kind of, because I'm working on kind of how I position myself as a life coach, and who is Julie Crefeld as a coach. And I think I am, and I'm still working on this, but I kind of feel like I'm the life coach for women that don't do life coaching.
Yeah.
Because I think there are tons of women that go on lots and lots of courses, and my course might not be for them. So it's women just dipping their toes in and thinking about these issues for the first time.
Well, I think you seem so much more like down to earth and just normal than a lot of the coaches you see out there, because a lot of people, like, not that it's a bad thing or anything like that, but they're very sort of elevated and a little bit woo-woo and very like personal development-y.
Yeah, and the thing is, I am quite woo, but I don't know the theory of the woo, if that makes sense. So I'm exploring it alongside these women and just saying, you know, so when we do our live coaching, occasionally I'll pull like different cards and stuff like that. And there's certain clients that roll their eyes because they're so not woo. And we make fun of it. So it's like, you know, there's lots of different techniques. Some women want the more spiritual stuff. Some women want me to tell them exactly what to do. Some women love it when I go, right, your homework this weekend is to go and tell your husband what a dick he's been. Do you know what I mean? And some women really kind of respond to being told directly what they need to do. And what's really nice is the advice that each other, you know, the women in the group give to each other. So it's not just me kind of leading them.
It's bringing it back to that whole like co-creation thing again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. Well, we're almost at time, so I'm going to ask you the question that I'm asking everybody, which is, what is your biggest guilty pleasure and how do you weave it into your work?
Oh, so it's not even that exciting, but I do something most days. I'm not doing it today because I've got a really busy day, but I have what I call my 3 p.m. pit stop. So I've realised in all the jobs that I've ever done, particularly when I worked in offices, I hated doing 9 to 5, and I'd always get to 3 o'clock. I'd always get to 3 o'clock and have like a sugar low, or just procrastinate with my work, or just be really like, oh God, I don't want to be here. And, you know, when I worked flexi hours, you could work, you know, you could leave the office at 4, but you couldn't at 3. So I'd spend this hour just tidying my desk and just, you know, waiting for time to finish. And actually, when I started working for myself, it was kind of a similar thing. I'd get to 3 o'clock and just be really kind of, so I've decided that 3 o'clock is the time where I literally go, right, what do I need? Do I need food? Do I need a walk? Do I need a nap? And most of the time I need a nap. So that's what I do. So at 3 o'clock, I set an alarm every day at 3 o'clock. It buzzes to remind me it's 3 o'clock. And most of the time, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's a nap is what I need. So I nap between 3 and 4. And then I get up, do a little bit of more work, and then go and pick my daughter up at 6. But it's been giving myself permission to sleep during the day has been really kind of empowering, because at first I saw it as quite lazy, like, you know, who needs to nap during the day? But actually, a lot of the time I'm exercising in the morning or exercising in the evening, and I've got a small child to look after. So I need that kind of, you know, time to recharge. So yeah, I think napping is probably my guilty pleasure.
Well, I mean, if you're a good sleeper, then by all means. I am a terrible sleeper. I can barely sleep at night, so I wish I could nap.
Yeah.
Your guilty pleasure. So share where we can find you online.
So if you're interested in all the running stuff, it's really easy. If you Google anything to do with Fat Runner, I come up really good on SEO, but it's www.toofat2run.co.uk is all of my running stuff. For the stuff around life coaching and how to write books and all of that kind of interesting more, I guess, business stuff, you can find me at juliecreffield.com, where you can kind of book me as a speaker and stuff like that.
Lovely. I'll make sure all of these links are in the show notes so everyone can come along and follow you and enjoy all of your stuff.
Brilliant.
So thank you so much for coming to talk to me today. It's been
Thank you.
Great, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to Your Biz, Your Rules. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave me an honest review on iTunes. As a little thank you, the first 150 people to leave me feedback will get access to Conquer Your Content Plan, my exclusive workbook designed to help you dream up, draft, and leverage strategic standout content in next to no time. See you next week.